Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of our weekly Moto News update, where this time we'll be looking at a new tracker from Triumph News on the Thruxton 400, as well spy shots of the next version of their Tiger 900, and leak shots of what looks like KTM's next mid-capacity sports bike. Then we've also got news of more BMW 450s. MV Agusta have got something exciting on the way too. There's rumors around a new super hot Super Duke. Honda's VFR could make a comeback as well, and we'll round off with a fresh take on zero-emissions biking. But before we get started, I should point out I'm not in the studio as usual. This week, I'm in California for the launch of the new Bonneville lineup, and so a massive sorry to everybody back home in the UK and during the December weather. Perhaps to make up for it slightly, I just want to say a massive thanks to Light Lock for their support for sponsoring this news episode, who make, of course, those brilliant angle grinder resistant locks that we featured in our full video about their products a few weeks back. If you haven't seen it already, do go and check it out. It gives you all the details on what makes them so good, and personally, I wouldn't even bother buying a regular non-armored lock anymore. Thing is though, since Black Friday, they've pretty much discontinued most of their discount codes. But my code, Motobob, is still working, and I think it's perhaps the only code that's left, or one of the very few. And it will get you 15 off your order if you buy direct from their website. So if you do fancy picking up a lock in the running till Christmas, some extra security, then I'd recommend checking out that code. And once again, a massive thanks to Light Lock for their support, and you can find all the details down in the description below. But let's crack on with the news, and the big one today is that Triumph have just announced their new Tracker 400, which follows on from the other bikes in the 400 lineup, like the Speed 400 Naked and the two Scrambler 400s, and also actually the Thruxton 400 sports bike. I think you could probably say it's most similar to the Speed 400 in terms of the chassis and spec, but it does get a few little tweaks here and there, as well as, of course, a fairly substantial redesign to the styling. Firstly, it does get the slightly more high-revving version of their 400 single that you can also get in the Thruxton 400, so it makes 5% more peak power than the Speed 400, for example, and it does it whilst maintaining the same healthy peak torque figure of 37.5 Nm. Then you've got some knobbly flat track style tires. I'm not sure they'll be as good to ride as proper road rubber, but they do help with that sort of flat tracky look, and they have made the riding position quite a bit more aggressive with 15 mm more seat height, bars that are 23 mm wider and 134 mm lower, and also foot pegs that sit 86 mm back and 27 mm up. So yeah, expect something that feels a bit more focused in terms of the ergonomics. I wouldn't say it's a true tracker, because it's still got the 17-inch wheels front and rear, but it does a fairly good impression, and that's massively aided by the styling package. There's a new tank shape, a new tail section, as well a bit of a fly screen to match, and there's a choice of 3 punchy paint jobs with plenty of graphics, and also a bit of a 400 number board on the side. Their traction control is switchable as well, so you can get a bit of a slide on, and so, yeah, overall, I think it looks like it could be a bit of fun, if not quite as refined perhaps in the appearance as some of the other 400 bikes. Price-wise, it comes in at $5,745, so a bit more than the Speed 400 at $5,245, although maybe to be expected for the extra bodywork, which of course adds to the cost. I think the big one, though, is probably the Gorilla 450 from Royal Enfield. It's the most similar bike in my book on the mid-capacity market. That one comes in quite a bit cheaper at just under $5,000 in the UK. But I would expect from my previous experience of the 400 for the level of finish to be a little bit higher on the Triumph, and so perhaps worth the extra spend to some buyers. As always, though, let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. The other thing that they've announced today at the same time is that the Thruxton 400, which was launched earlier in the year for India, will become available to other markets in the new year in 2026, and that includes, of course, the UK. This one, again, very similar to the Speed 4 300, or broadly similar but they have given it a bit of a half fairing to give it a more sporty look. It's got that slightly more powerful version of the engine too, but I think the thing that will make the biggest difference is the handlebar position with a sort of clip-on style bar that's going to give you a very sporty feeling position. Brilliant looking bike in my book. I think it's a nice little appealing retro, and that one will come in at 5,995, so a little bit more on top now. Apparently they'll be in dealers from March, the tracker from April, and so do keep your eyes peeled down at your local Triumph dealer if you fancy a bit of a demo on either of those. Also on the trend front this week, we've seen the latest spy shots of what appears to be the next generation of their Tiger 900 out test. No massive surprise here, though. They usually do 3 iterations of each major version of their models. And so, yeah, this follows on from the first gen of the Tiger 900, which came in about 2020 or 2021. And then the second generation, which came out last year with a bunch of little incremental updates. So yeah, I wouldn't expect this one to be massively different. The rudiments look pretty much the same. The main part of the frame, for example, I think the bike in the pictures is probably the GT model with the cast wheels and the 19-inch front. But you can see the exhaust system, for example, has been redesigned a little bit, which probably focuses on stricter noise regulations. And also, it looks like a new subframe, which perhaps gives a little bit more space to both the rider and passenger. Then you can also see a bit of a different design to the swing arm, so that might lead to a different geometry perhaps. And also, the bodywork has been updated to be a touch more modern, a touch more angular, which is typically what they do throughout these updates. You can also see a different shape to the deflectors and windscreen, so perhaps improvements to comfort in the cockpit. I wouldn't say the current gen is the most comprehensive in terms of wind protection, but I think the most substantial visible update is the use of radars, both front and rear, which should give you blind spot warnings from the rear radar and also potentially active cruise control from the front and maybe front collision warnings. There is also a bit of a tweak to the front end, I guess, partly to accommodate that radar. They've also gone with a central speedometer. Single LED headlight it looks like, although I would expect once the rest of the headlight, the running lights around it are untaped, it'll probably still have a strong resemblance to the Tiger family. I can't imagine they'll just tear up that design language overnight though over at KTM, some pictures have surfaced of what looks like the next generation of their RC390 sports bike, and I thought potentially these ones were just AI generated, but then when I dug into it, the source that posted them said that the image that they received was so low resolution that when they blew it up, it looked a little bit wonky, and that's perhaps what makes it look like it's been AI generated, perhaps true. And also it wouldn't be a very imaginative use of AI, either, because it looks exactly how you'd expect it to in terms of the styling. But I would say the 2 exhaust headers that are visible at the front would be a substantial change, a move away from the 390 single, it in preference of what looks to be a 450 parallel twin. You see it's got 450 written on the side as well, so perhaps expect a little bit more performance versus the current 390, although there are limits to how far you can take an A2 compliant bike. And I would say as well, I'd be very surprised if they did call it a 450, because it would be a very big move away from their super consistent approach to naming their models to end in a 90. You got the 390, the 790s, 890s, 990s, 1290s, 1390s. So it'd be a big surprise, but yeah, maybe it is time for a little bit of a change. Meanwhile, MCM reported this week that BMW Motorrad's boss, Marcus Flash, confirmed in an interview with them that they'll soon start to expand their new 450 lineup. Now, the first model, of course, is the much considered F450 GS adventure bike, but in this interview, he says we're not ready to disclose specifics, but the 450 is the successor to the 310. Looking at the existing 310 lineup, you can more or less guess what we'll bring out in future on this 450 platform, and so yeah, definitely expect on top of that adventure bike a naked bike, which would be the replacement for the G310R, and in some markets I guess there'll be a sports bike that replaces the G310RR. Meanwhile, they also spoke to MV Aguster recently, and they've confirmed that an evolution of their stunning 921's concept bike, which they revealed at EICMA a few years back, will come to production at some point, with them saying it's coming in a slightly different configuration to what you've seen at EICMA, but the 921 will not be called the 921 anymore. We decided to introduce a sort of new segment. So this will be a brand after a different name and you will know very soon. It's their CEO Luca Martin in this interview, and he went on to say that concept evolved. Let's put it like that. And we'll not go ahead with the 4-cylinder engine, it's going to be another 3-cylinder engine configuration dedicated to that specific model. There's going to be more than a model, more than one, and it's going to be a family, a small neoclassic lineup. Now for me, that would probably be the most exciting new retro bike to be announced in many years. I think the concept looks amazing. Also, their new 950 or 900 triple engine sounds like it'll be great on the road as well. And so let's hope this one isn't too far off. Then over at Cycloworld this week, we've got so many new bike rumors. They report that a new super spec version of KTM, already bonkers 1390 Super Duke, is on the way with a type approval filing revealing the name 1390 Super Duke RR. Now, at the moment, you can get the 1390 Super Duke R with its 187 horsepower V8. When there's the Super Duke R Evo on top of that with the semi-active suspension, but one would assume this RR model would sit at the top of the lineup with the most premium level of spec available. Now they have made RR model in the past on 2 occasions, a limited run on the 1290 Super Duke, and the idea with it was not necessarily to boost the engine, but actually focus on weight reduction. So specifically, Cycloworld say in the pattern in the paperwork that the performance figures look to be the same, but there is a lighter weight figure which they expect to come from carbon bodywork, a titanium Akrapovic exhaust, and also perhaps forged aluminium rims. So like I say, not necessarily a bike that needed to go any faster, but this RR will probably be an absolute rocket ship. Now the German publication Motorrad Online speculate this week that Honda could be about to bring back their iconic VFR with some pattern drawings showing a new V4 engine in a fairly advanced level of detail as well, which is what leads them to think that it actually might come to something. Specifically, the 2 patterns cover a new oil circuit to reduce internal friction, as well as one for better cooling of the rear cylinder bank, so really quite specific. And so that's what has them thinking it might mean that something's actually in the works. So could it really come back, or would it be too similar, a new V4 engine in performance to their V3 compressor engine that they've publicly said they're working on developing towards production? Again, let me know what you think of this one down in the comments. Still, even the V3 compressor can't quite compete with this concept bike for blue sky thinking, which comes from an Italian design studio called Mask Architects. The idea for this one is that when you park the bike up, the folding wings pop out and create solar panels, and so the bike charges up while you go about your business ready for the next ride. So a nice idea maybe wouldn't quite fly in the UK with our weather, but could be one for here in California, or maybe their native Italy anyway. As always, I'd love to know what you think of this week's story, so do let me know down in the comments below. And I'll also, as usual, put a playlist on the screen so you can catch up with the rest of the videos from this week. In case you missed any in one, there's a vlog of me picking up our new bike, and the other a walk around of the Triumph stand at Motorcycle Live for a look at their best new bikes for 2026. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest. motorcycle news and reviews right here on Motobob, including some reviews of the new Bonnevilles from this week. A massive thanks for watching today as well, and we'll catch you in the next video.